God, I just pray for the women that are listening today that have had miscarriages or are about to have a miscarriage or have faced substantial loss, whether it's the loss of their husband or a child that has been born or whatever it is. You know that this life is very hard, and yet we have the hope of heaven. And I just pray that Lindsay's testimony would just encourage the people hearing it today and just remind us that even when we don't feel it, that you are good and that we can trust you. We can trust you in all things. So thank you for Lindsay and just bless her family. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Well, welcome to Only Love Today. I have an longtime friend from feels like another life ago. I was trying to
I
count up
know.
how many years ago was I in college, and then I was like, I don't want to know, because
It's
like 20.
more than I would like. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're at like
it's
20 now. Yeah.
it's like 20. It's like it's kind of ridiculous, and I think
Which is
you're
not
just
possible because we're 25. So like
I
I don't know how
know. Except when you get up in the morning, I don't
everything
feel
hurts.
25. I
Yeah.
mean, like, I was talking to my grandma today, and I was like, "Yeah, grandma, it's like they say, getting old isn't for sissies." You know,
Someone moved wrong and now
we
everything
moved
hurts.
wrong, or I
Yeah.
sneezed, and crazy things happen. But
Yes.
Lindsay and I met actually in college, and we are actually part of serving in a ministry together, which we'll talk about a little bit. But the last couple months, like, just walked with some people through some just hard things, and not even close, but just grief in general. I've seen
Mhm.
just some really hard, heavy things of people I love and care about, and even in the past that have happened a long time ago. And I just felt like sometimes we can do all the counseling or all the therapy or pray or read the right books to you know, walk through a situation, but sometimes we also just feel stuck in our pain. And I just feel like the Lord brought Lindsay to mind because we're going to talk about this book that she wrote today called Unbeaten. It's a Bible study about how biblical heroes rose above their pain, and you can too. And so we're going to talk about the topic of miscarriage, but in her book, you can really read this for anything you're going through. I loved just the daily Bible studies, the daily takeaway, the scripture, the questions, because I'm not in the middle or have had a recent miscarriage or anything right now, but I was able to just apply it to what am I going through right now that I could think about this with. And I feel like this is one of those books that, along with God's word, we just kind of need on our shelf because life's a roller coaster. We know that, like, as soon as we're at that mountaintop, there will be another valley. We don't know what it is. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But Lindsey Bell is not only my friend, but she's also the author of two books, Unbeaten, which we're talking about today, and Searching for Sanity. Just so you know, we're not going to solve anything today.
No.
We don't have secret
There's going to be
answers.
yeah. No,
The
definitely not.
There just is, at the end of the day, there is hope of heaven that when we get there, we will see the ultimate plan and all the pieces of everything, and we'll go, okay, God, I see now. I see
I
now
like to
why.
I like
Yeah.
to think of it like God's in a helicopter looking over like the
Yes.
interchanges and the highway, and like we
Yes.
can't see it. We're in the car, so like we're driving along and we don't see like where everything's going, and maybe there's a crash up ahead. Like we don't see all of the little interchanging pieces, but like
Yes.
God up above can see everything. And someday we're gonna be able to look down and be like, oh, like yeah, you guided me
Yes.
this way, and maybe I bypassed one of those things,
Hmm.
or maybe I went through something and it was really hard, but it ultimately led me here, and we'll be able to see all that. But yeah, that day is not
Yes.
today. So
That day's not today. And also just very quickly, like, this world is fallen broken. There's sin in the world. And because, Satan is rampaging the earth, like doing all the things, there's just the reality of that, of that we
sometimes
are
life is just hard,
human.
and there's not, I
It
mean,
is.
my personal belief is there's not always a reason. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes absolutely I think God works through hard things, but is there always a reason that something happens? I don't think so. Sometimes it's just
Yeah.
life is hard and Satan is real and
Mhm.
he wants to push us away from God in whatever means possible.
Totally, totally. Well, before we talk about a few things, can you just give us a snapshot of who you are, your family, and what does an average day in your life look like right now? You've
Sure.
authored a couple books and you still get to write for a living, but it looks different, I
It
think,
does look
than
different now. Yeah.
yeah.
So I am married to my high school sweetheart. We started dating when I was 16 and he was 15.
Aw,
We've been married for now 20 and a half years. We have two boys. We have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and a dog named Champion who's laying at my feet right now. Hopefully, he'll cooperate through this interview. Yeah, typical day now as I do work from home. I'm a staff writer for a holistic health practitioner. She's based in Seattle, Washington, but obviously that's not where I'm from. I'm from the Midwest, if you can tell by my accent. And so I work for her. I'm her staff writer. I write all of her social media content, emails that she sends out. I just, yeah, do all of her writing, editing, copywriting,
okay,
ghostwriting, all the stuff for her business. So usually that uses the bulk of my creative energy. So I don't do a ton of personal writing. But I
okay.
do have, like you said, I have a couple books and I've ghostwritten a few. And yeah, writing's just always been a passion for me because I feel like a lot of times I can't say it necessarily all the time in words, but I can say it in writing. And I've
Mhm.
found that sometimes when I say something in writing, maybe it's what someone else couldn't put into words and it ministers to
Yeah,
them in a way when they read it that they needed to say it but didn't know how to. And so I gave them
yeah.
words and that's just a powerful thing. And so I've always loved getting to use the gift of words to minister to people.
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of writing, this book, Unbeaten, was,
Mm-hmm.
from your heartache trials and just God's miracles through, several miscarriages, but can you kinda walk us through how you came about to write this book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to remember in the just as far as our story, I'll kind of give you the abbreviated version. We had our 16 or now 16-year old. We had him had a few complications throughout that pregnancy, but we ended up carrying him full term and everything went well. And then when he was 2, we found out we were pregnant again. Everything went well. We saw the heartbeat. Everything looked good. I was actually still volunteering at this crisis pregnancy center, so they needed to
Oh,
do a
wow.
training ultrasound. So I was pregnant. I was volunteering, so they said, "Well, we'll just do one on you because we need to, get some training hours in." So they did the
Okay.
ultrasound at about 12 weeks and didn't see a heartbeat. So they then sent me from volunteering. I left volunteering and then
And
went
you
over
were
to.
with, like, your friends, like, you were with
Yeah, yeah,
that's like, you weren't with some, like, "Oh, this is your doctor." You were, like, at the
yeah.
place
Like
that you serve and work.
we were just doing, and it was just a for fun. Like, sure, let's do an ultrasound. You need
Oh.
to practice, and I'm pregnant, so let's do it. So yeah, it
Oh,
was.
man.
But that was, as hard as that was, it was actually a blessing in disguise because no one loves you better than the people that love you. Like yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, to have the nurses there were so wonderful and gracious and knew exactly what to do. So they helped me get in the back door to my OBGYN. So I didn't have to sit in the waiting room with, all the other pregnant women. And so they took me in the back door and got me all set up. And so that was my first miscarriage.
Mm.
That was in October of 2010. And then a few months
Okay.
later, in January 1st, I took a pregnancy test and saw those two lines again. And I just knew, like, okay, God's going to redeem. Like 2010 was a year of brokenness. And now we're going to get what's referred to as a rainbow baby. It's a child after loss. So I just
Yeah.
knew God was going to
Hope
redeem
after
it.
loss.
And then, like 4 hours later, I started miscarrying. So that one was super hard because I felt deep down like if I had not taken that pregnancy test that morning, I would have never known. So why did God even let me? And on New
Yes.
Year's Day, like I had so much hope starting the year, and then like half a day later, I was already spiraling.
Yeah.
So that was the second one,
That was
and then
my experience was very early
yeah,
of yeah, of just like,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have even have known if we weren't trying or,
If,
it's
yeah,
like, why
yeah,
did and this probably happens to women all the time
all the time.
that I think people actually do miscarriage, but you just don't even realize it,
Yeah, a lot of people just
miscarry,
don't
excuse me,
realize
but
it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and then
Okay.
6 months later, we were at Vacation Bible School. In the middle of Vacation Bible School, I was again about 12 weeks. We had seen the heartbeat, like everything looked, with all of mine, all my pregnancies looked good. We saw heartbeats, everything looked healthy until about that 12-week mark. And then in that instance, I was in the middle of Vacation Bible School, and like we were actually like leading the kids in worship. So I was with this group of kids, and I like felt that familiar pain again. So that was our third miscarriage. Was in July that bled into August, by August of 2011. And then a year after that, we did fertility testing to check and see how everything, if we could find out any reason why. They never did. They did a ton of
Yeah.
preventative type things just in case, like they put me on, progesterone, and I feel like maybe baby
Okay.
aspirin at one point. I don't remember why. I don't know.
Yeah.
They did a whole bunch of like
Yeah.
preventative things. And then I ended up miscarrying that pregnancy as well. And while we were pregnant with that one, I decided, my husband and I both, we decided we just can't, I can't handle the months of like when you are pregnant and you've had that many miscarriages, and maybe even after the first one. I can't remember back that far, but just the
Yeah.
anticipation, every time you go to the restroom thinking, is it going to end now? Like, when is the next shoe going to drop?
Mm,
And just that living in that state of fear and anxiety was too much. And it just got worse and worse with each miscarriage. So after that fourth one, we just decided, you know what? We're not going to do that anymore. And our story, that's an abbreviated version. We tried to adopt through the foster care system, and had a couple babies go home through that, and eventually decided, you know what? Our hearts are just so broken right now that we just need to enjoy what we have and not wish for what
yeah.
obviously we're not going to get. So that's
Mm,
kind of the abbreviated version of what led me to write the book. But in the middle of
yeah.
all that, like, of course, I was having this faith crisis. And the first one, I feel like I handled really, really well, because one miscarriage, I felt like God would allow. But then when we got to 2, 3, and 4, like, I think there was a part of me that thought, why would a good God allow something like this? Like, I can wrap my head around him allowing 1, maybe even 2, not, I mean, I don't know. But 3, 4, like, I just couldn't wrap my mind around how a good God who loves me could allow something like that, when I was
Yeah.
praying every day, God, don't let us lose this one. And so, honestly, there's this quote by Toni Morrison: if there's a book you want to read and it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. And that's
Oh,
what it was.
wow.
Like, I needed a book in that time that would actually help me walk through what I was going through and find God in the midst of it, because in that time I didn't feel God's presence. And so I needed something to help me realize, you know what, he's still there even when I don't feel him, even when my circumstances suggest he's not there. He is still there. So I wrote the book that I needed.
That's such a great answer. And I'm sure, like, because it is, um, all scripture based, you are basically studying characters of the Bible and
Yeah,
what
and I
they
was
went
doing it
through
because I
and,
needed to. Like,
you
I
know,
need to find God in the midst of this. And so that was my
yes.
search for him in the middle of it, and what he taught me, the questions that he and I struggled with in that time.
I love that you chose to lean into them because a lot of times we do have that choice and we can run, or we can lean in just with any
Which
kind
I
of
did.
loss or conflict, you
I
know?
did plenty of the running too, and the
Okay,
the,
good.
the pushing away too. Yeah, let's just
Yeah.
be honest here. Like, there was
Let's
plenty
yeah.
of that too.
Yeah.
And still, even today, like, one of the questions that you and I talked about beforehand was, like, do I ever still struggle with it? Well, yeah, because, like, he never fixed it for us. I love that some people get their rainbow babies. We never did. Like, we had one biological child. We had 3 losses, and then we can kind of get into the our special adoption situations. And then we had another loss. So, like, we never really got the resolution, at least like I hoped for.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's not there were definitely times that I was angry, that I did pull back, and feel like, why pray if God's not listening to me, which he
Yeah.
was, he just wasn't doing what I wanted him to do.
Yeah. It's so hard too because, like one of my friends, she's like, the Lord just told me I was gonna have a boy, and she went through 10 miscarriages, like 10, and like was
Oh,
like fighting cancer, and she like, the doctors are like, no, you're not gonna. She's like, the God told me, and she did. She had her boy. He's married now and whatnot,
wow.
but everybody's story is different,
Hmm.
so sometimes I feel, this is me being honest, like judging another mom, like, keep going because my friend had 10, or but then like some people have one and they're like, no, I feel peace. That,
Yeah,
especially with your
absolutely.
husband, like, okay, you had 3, 4, like, and then you and your husband are like, okay, this is okay, we have peace, so but
Hmm.
every woman's story is different, you
Yeah,
know?
it totally is because I mean, the number of people and everyone means well. Like when you're trying to comfort someone, like everyone means well, but so many people said, "Oh, I just know this one's going to be different." Like, no you don't. Like
You
who
don't
knows
know
what's going to
anything.
happen? Yeah.
I will punch you in
Yeah.
the face. Yes.
Oh, I remember. Oh, we're just going to be honest here. So I remember it was our third one. It was either I think it was our third one. It's our third one. In the elevator, we already knew that it was a miscarriage. And this sweet older gentleman, he saw me holding the ultrasound picture of the miscarriage. Like this was the ultrasound picture of the miscarriage. Like we were going down. We already knew like I was gonna have to go into surgery. Like, and he just picked the wrong time. So he he just saw that I was holding the ultrasound picture and said, "Oh, congratulations! Is it a boy or a girl?" And I'm pretty sure I looked at him and I said, "It's a dead baby." Even now I'm like, oh, I can't believe I said that. But I was in such a dark place at that
Yeah,
time
this is
that
the
I was
reality.
just like,
Here you
yeah.
go, old man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
he's
you really
old
want to
enough,
know?
he can take
Here's where
it.
we're at.
What did he do? Was he just like,
It
"I'm
was so
sorry."
awkward the rest of the drive. Yeah, he apologized. And then I felt bad because I'm like, I'm so sorry. It just came
Yeah,
out.
but this is the reality of here's
Yeah,
where we're
it's just
at.
your grief and everyone is so
Yeah,
different. And there were some times that yeah, sometimes that I was really ugly in that season and that's part of it. Like it's just
yeah,
how you're processing that grief
yeah.
and God brings you through it and then you look back someday and you regret and think, "Oh my goodness, that poor sweet old man who was just trying to be nice."
I know. That's so funny. Oh, but that's okay because it's good to know that women who love the Lord and are wanting to live for Him mess up and need the cross,
Oh,
because that's
absolutely.
basically why, I
Yeah.
started this podcast, is like, this is what I needed, only love today, even though I wanna punch this kid in the face right now, like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah,
my
and you're
daughter's
gonna
just like,
mess up. Like
yeah,
it's on the parenting journey. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
totally,
every day, every day.
it
And it's
is.
all just
It's amplified though when you're in grief, though,
oh,
like,
totally. And
you can
honestly,
have
that's a
these,
lot of
like,
the reason why we
yeah,
stopped trying because I'm like, I am not a good mom to the children I do have. Like I've got to figure out a way to get back to being me and to not be grieving all the time because yeah, it's
yeah.
definitely amplified.
Definitely. Well, I love the theme of Unbeaten. I
Thank
love
you.
that theme because that is everyone who chooses to walk with Jesus, whether you do or not, your life is going to be hard. Let's just be
Hmm.
honest. Um, and so we have to say, no, no matter what, I'm going to follow Christ, whatever happens. And there is some hope in that, but there's also some fear because that also is like a target for the enemy to be like, well,
Hmm.
what about this? Well, what about this? What if I take your husband? What if I take your kids? What if you have chronic pain and all the things. But that's why I love this book, because this Bible study, because it really is something every believer should read, because whether you're in a trial or a crisis right now, you are going to be. It might not
Hmm.
be tomorrow, it might be in 5 years, but just we need these testimonies of hope to remember that, like someone like Lindsay has gone through this. She's survived. I can see she's happy again. Doesn't mean that there's not bruises, scars, pain, heartache, but sometimes just hearing somebody's story of but you're so happy, but you're like, "No, I said this to a guy in the elevator and, this is I did these things or I was crazy or I didn't pray for a season," or all these things, but, um, I love this devotional because it really can be for anyone in any situation. What was your favorite character to write about in the Bible?
Such a good question. I mean,
Um,
if I had to pick my favorite, I'm going to give you two.
okay,
Technically, it's four because three of them are both together. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are one of my
okay.
favorites
Yes.
because for so much of that season of my life, I felt like God was no longer there for me. And so in their story, they go into the fire, and a
But
lot of
if
scholars
not,
believe that, yeah, and a lot of scholars believe that that's Jesus incarnate that joins them in the fire. And so there's that fourth figure walking around with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire. And that
yes.
to me was just the reminder I needed that, you know what? I'm in the middle of it. I'm in the middle of this fire right now, and I may not feel like God is with me, but their story reminds me that God walks us through the fire. So that would be one of my favorites. And then the other one was Esther. Um,
Mm,
her the entire book of Esther, God's name is not mentioned one time in that book, but his fingerprints are all over it. So I loved
mhm.
her story because it was a reminder to me to look for the fingerprints, because sometimes
Yes.
you can't see God in the middle of the hard things, but if you look for him,
Mhm.
maybe you'll see, like, we had so many people who did amazing things for us. Like my mom got me a piece of jewelry for every baby we lost, so I had a little something to remember them by. My mother-in-law planted a tree. I had some life group girls who had a blanket embroidered with all of our babies' names on it.
And
Yeah,
your
just so
grief looks
many.
different. Yeah, I love that because
Yeah,
some people want to name their baby and it's a thing and we talk about, but
and
other
and some
people,
people
it's just
don't.
very private and that's
Yeah,
okay. It's
and
okay to be
there's
private.
not a right or wrong way. Like
Yes.
everyone, the right way is the right way
Yeah.
for you, whatever feels authentic for you. But I just had
Yeah.
so many of God's fingerprints in that, and they showed up in people. Like that's most of the time how I saw God.
Amen.
Is, I mean, there were other things, especially as we get into our adoption story, that God definitely showed up, but also just in people, in His people, He used His people to
Mhm.
show, I'm still here for you. I'm in this friend and this family member, and yeah.
Yes, that's so good. Because a lot of times we can say I actually had a friend tell me this, and she was just, like, going through a lot of hardship the last 10, 15 years, and I just remember her being like, "Well, yeah, God wasn't there." And I'm like, "This person filled your fridge. This person watched your kids." Like, God is in his people. Like, sometimes we're, like, just blinders on waiting for this, like,
Mm-hmm.
helicopter to come rescue, but he sent boats and canoes and all kind of people to be there. So it's a good reminder to in our grief, to open our eyes to people when we wanna hide, and it's okay to hide too
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
grieve,
And
but he
there's a
does
time
send
for
his
that.
people.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
you
And you
know?
have to really listen to
Totally.
yourself and what you need in the middle of the grief, because what you need may be totally different than what someone else needs. But you,
Yes.
yeah. But yeah,
And I
look for God's fingerprints in whatever way, shape, or form they might come in.
I love that. I love that, and I love that you didn't shy away from just vulnerability in this book. It's not just like, "God is good and see what he did." It's like, "What about this?" Like, "Why didn't God rescue this person? Why
Mm-hmm.
was he quiet? Why didn't he save, you know, this person? Why did he save this person?" But what is the question you feel like you asked the most over and over again?
I think why. Yeah,
It is
definitely
the
why.
why.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, why. Yeah, for sure. Why did you allow this? And why did you allow this over and over again? And why did you not come through? Like a version of why is what, and honestly, God never answered that for me. I mean, in a way he did. Like I know that I'm a much more empathetic person, especially to people who have experienced baby loss or miscarriages, but all across the board. Like I think I have a lot more understanding, a lot less judgment of someone, because you just never know what they might be going through.
Mhm.
So that's one way that I think, I mean,
Okay.
I don't think God allowed it for that, but I think that's something good he brought from it. But he
It's good
never
to hear
really,
that yeah, it's good to hear that, yeah, I didn't get my answer, but I have his supernatural peace that,
Yeah, and it's sometimes
It
it
changes.
ebbs and flows. Like
Okay.
sometimes I feel at peace, and sometimes like a song will come on that was maybe a song that was popular back then, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm
Mm,
crying again. Like we're like 10 years out. What is wrong with me? But that's
yeah,
that's okay. Like that's it. Definitely
yeah.
the piece ebbs and flows, and I do feel like for me personally, I have to because I naturally am I want to understand things. I like to
Mhm.
understand
You
things.
learner, yeah.
Yes. So the why is hard for me, and not having ever really gotten a firm like we never found a medical reason that we were having issues. We never and it never got fixed. So
Yeah.
not having that why was hard, but trying to shift the question instead of why, shift
Mhm.
it to what now? Like regardless of why,
That's
what are
good.
you going to do now? And that when I can force myself to do that. And sometimes I'm better than other days. I mean, like I said, some days it ebbs and flows.
That's so good. It's so good because I know that there's somebody gonna listen to this that's like, "Gosh dang it," because 'cause they've been stuck in the why. They've
Yeah,
been frozen in the why.
and I
Yeah.
was for a long and I still get that way sometimes because like I said, I don't
Okay.
have my why. So, yeah,
Yeah.
you're stuck in it and just trying to shift that perspective from instead of why, what now?
Yeah.
What do you want to do with this now? Because this is just the reality.
Yes. I love, and you talked about this a little bit already with Esther, God being in the shadows, his name's not mentioned, and we can't see his hand at work. And then you talk about the Israelites, with the 400 years of slavery and
Mhm.
what God was doing then, and how he was working his story, his plan about to bring Jesus, not in our time, not in our lifetime, and but he is outside of time, and he has everything being orchestrated, even though it seems like the enemy is winning a lot of days.
Mhm.
In a lot of ways, we can trust that he is working for his good and for the good of those who love him. Can you kind of share from that perspective, all this is happening, but you write about that having these miscarriages actually brought a baby into your home.
Mhm.
And I thought that those
Yeah.
words were so powerful. Can you share a
Yeah, I
little bit
mean cuz
about
yeah,
that story?
absolutely. Yeah, it was 100% because of our miscarriages that we were able to adopt. So basically, what happened is we were reeling from our third miscarriage. We miscarried in July, August. And sometime in the middle of August, my mom calls me late one evening and asks if we want to Skype. And I'm like, of course, this is telling you it was about 13 years ago. Skype isn't as much of a thing now anymore, is it?
You're like, "Are you dying? Just tell me now."
Exactly. That's honestly what I was thinking. I'm like, what's like someone has cancer, someone has like someone got in a car accident. Like and I was also very in a very
Tender.
looking back now, I was pretty depressed based off of my
Mm,
circumstances. And
yeah.
so I'm going to all these worst case scenarios. We'll come to find out someone from my home church had contacted her and asked her to contact my husband and I. They knew about our miscarriages and they knew a birth mom who, at 8 months pregnant, decided that she wanted to choose adoption. So she had been planning
Oh,
to parent at 8 months. So she's due in November. And this is like August, September. Knew that, changed her mind, decided she wanted to adopt. And she asked, unbeknownst to both of these families, she asked two different families, who do you think, like, do you know anyone that would want to adopt my baby? And both of these families, unbeknownst to each other, said us. And the reason they said us is because of our
mhm.
miscarriages, because they knew how much that
Yeah.
we were really wanting a baby. And so she took that as
Wow.
okay, if both of these families are saying this one, then we're going to move forward with it. And so my mom reached out to us and we decided kind of tentatively, at this point, we hadn't even considered adoption. We had no idea what it entailed, but it was also a trickier adoption. It was across state lines,
Okay.
tribal courts. Like there was some tricky things that went along with it, but God just piece by piece worked it all together. And
Wow.
we met the birth mom, and when we met her, she asked us, "Do you have any names in mind?" And Keith and I had talked, and we had two different names. Um, Caleb and Caden were the two names. And when I said the name Caden, she started crying, and I thought, okay, you hate the name, no problem. But come to find out, that was the name that she had originally chosen when she was planning to parent. So
Oh
that
my
was like the
gosh.
confirmation that I think God knew I needed to see His hand in it. Like this is from me. you can trust that this is from me. And so we moved forward with it. I was able to cut his umbilical cord, take him home from the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
Adoption was final like within a month. It was super fast. Very much
Like,
not.
so happy for you, but also, like, I'm still nursing a one-year-old and just, like, so like, sometimes postpartum, and I'm just
Yeah,
thinking, like, there is joy, but there is also great loss,
so much.
that comes with
Yeah.
that, and so just thinking
And
of,
I
like,
think people think
everything
of, yes,
her
people
body
think
is
of,
gonna go through and not have
absolutely.
baby there, but then
Yes.
God is using this and that she
Hmm.
still chose to have a baby, like,
Yeah, she's a beautiful,
it's
beautiful young
amazing.
woman. Yeah, and I think people think of adoption as this beautiful, amazing thing, and it is, but it's also so hard
Yeah,
on all parties involved, and it's, yeah, it's
and I'm sure you've seen it played out differently because that was actually real quick rabbit trail. I told my husband, I said, I won't marry you unless you're open to church planting and like having like 5 kids, possibly adopting. So we have planted 2 churches and we have 4 kids plus one miscarriage, excuse me. So like technically 5 kids, but and we're tired and we're old and we have a 1-year-old. We're both like turned 40 this year.
yeah.
But part of me is like, will we adopt in the future? But I also feel like I always thought I would, but God has sent so many people in my life that have adopted and they're like, don't do it. They
I mean,
say, unless you and your husband both are all in and know for sure,
mhm.
don't do it because,
Oh,
right?
totally. And but I
Because,
think because
yeah,
adoption is painted, and maybe in all communities, but I think definitely in the Christian community, it's painted as this beautiful thing, which it is.
yes.
But sometimes we neglect to talk about how hard it can be
I
also.
mean, your baby just, heard this voice for
For
9
9
months,
months, and then they grieve, and they grieve, and they grieve very loudly in
you
the
know?
newborn. Like, it's,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's, like, loss and trauma, and so but I hadn't thought a ton of that perspective, but having friends
I
yeah, we're just like,
until I lived it. I'm like,
"You
why is
lived
he?
it."
Yeah, like he's crying so much. Why is he crying so much? Oh, because he's grieving the loss of his birth mom too. Like, this is not.
Oh,
There's some really
yeah,
hard things too that go along with adoption that a lot of people don't
yeah,
recognize.
but God can fill in the gaps, and when he brings
Yeah,
you to something and it just sounds like it was, like, his hand
his hand was in
was
it.
in it.
Like, yeah, it
That's so
was.
cool.
And I think he knew that I would need that going through the years too, and through the tricky preteen and teenage
Yeah,
years, and the rebellious stuff. Like, he would need me to have that reminder that yes, this is what I intended. Because
yeah,
otherwise, you're going to question you're going to question yourself.
totally. And does your adopted son's mom, like, do you still have a relationship there? What does that look like?
Um, we send her pictures
Okay,
regularly, so we send her pictures through a mutual contact. So
okay,
not a ton. We haven't seen
okay.
her in probably maybe 8 years. It's been a while
Oh,
since we've
okay,
seen her,
okay.
so we
But
have
it wasn't
limited
like she
communication.
was okay, so it wasn't like she was somebody at your church you were doing life with.
No, no. So it's, I guess you'd call it. I mean, it was originally, the plan was probably a pretty closed adoption, but other than just pictures. But she has seen him just a few times in
Okay,
maybe three or four times in his lifetime. So not a ton, but she's seen him
okay.
occasionally. But I mean, I think the world of her. I mean, she chose life when it was really hard for her to make that
Yeah,
choice.
that's amazing. That's so cool, and sometimes we forget that because we're so pro-life, but then we don't wanna get messy and
Oh yeah.
help
Uh-huh. And
when
it's totally messy. I mean, these are hard situations. Yeah.
well, oh, your kid is, dealing with all this trauma,
Hmm.
of about you
And
chose
you're
life.
dealing with,
Yeah,
birth parents are dealing with all the stuff, and
totally.
yeah, it's definitely, it's not a birth and then it's over. It's
Did you and you don't have to share this if you don't want to, but were you afraid that she was gonna change her mind?
100%, because
Like
I was still in a state of grief. Like, we had miscarried in July
okay,
or August. He was born in November. So I was still very much grieving and very
yeah.
much thinking, what else? Like, my ongoing fear was, what is the next thing that God's going to allow? Like, is he going to allow us to fall in love with this child and then it be taken from
Mm,
us as well? Yeah,
Oh,
so that was
wow.
definitely
Yeah.
a very real fear until
'Cause
the
is there
adoption was
like
final.
a yeah, I was gonna say, is there like a time where
There's a time
yeah,
where biomom can change
you're
your
just
mind.
in the waiting, in the
Yeah.
waiting, in
Yeah,
the
the
waiting,
waiting
in
is
the waiting, in
waiting
the
is
waiting,
hard. Yes.
in the waiting. Oh,
Our
okay,
situation, like,
so
it moved super fast, and so the adoption was
okay.
final pretty fast, which was a blessing, and
Yeah.
maybe God gave that to us because he knew Lindsay can't handle very long, so
Like,
we're gonna have to
she's
move
been
this along.
waiting, she's been faithful. Oh, well, you've talked about I'm thankful you shared that you do still, have heartache at times or have moments, and you allow yourself those moments, but you don't let them spiral. It sounds like you know how to
Most
get
of the
back
time.
up a little bit better, that
Yeah.
you're not in the pit of despair for 12 months.
It's like I think I know, I just have to choose. Like, I know what I need to do, and I have to choose
So
to
hard.
do it. Like, I know practicing gratitude helps me, but I have to choose to
Mm.
practice that gratitude for it to help me.
Yes, which is so hard because sometimes, I mean, let's be honest, who doesn't wanna just sit in the pit and eat ice
Right?
cream with peanut butter and just be like, "Everyone leave me alone, lock your bedroom door, and watch whatever." Like, when you're low or you're grieving or postpartum or you're in that depression, like, sometimes you just really don't wanna get out. But then
Uh-huh.
sometimes you do and you can't and you need help, you know?
Counseling was huge for me. Like, after our second miscarriage, I spent a
Okay.
decent amount of time in counseling, and that I just needed to voice those things. For the
Yeah.
longest time, like, I felt like some feelings were off limits for me as a
Oh,
Christian
wow.
woman.
Okay.
And
That's good
so
to
I
hear.
needed a counselor to basically give me permission to feel it's okay to feel anger. God's big enough to handle that. But I had to let, for me, it took a counselor letting me voice all of that messiness, all of that ugliness in a safe space for me to realize, like, yeah,
Yeah. You
counseling
can
is definitely like
yeah,
sometimes you need a professional licensed counselor to really help you through that grief
that's so
and to
good.
give you a safe place to feel all the junk that you don't want to
Yeah,
feel.
because you need to let your, like, feelings out, but also you're nasty too. Like like,
Uh-huh.
if you're hurting, like you said, you know, there are just moments where you're like, "I'm just not being a great mom," or, like, we've all been there, and you
Mhm.
need that safe space to be like, "Oh, whoa, I n I need the grace of Jesus," you
Yes.
know, right now,
Yeah.
and this isn't who I wanna be, but I also kinda hate myself that I'm here, and just it's this
Mhm.
whole entangled mess of
Yeah.
wanting to fix it all and beyond, but I love that there's so many great sections, in your book, Unbeaten, but I love that you spent, like, a whole section on setting biblical characters when you didn't do anything wrong. So I would say,
Mhm.
you know, like, sometimes we have a miscarriage, you know, because maybe of life choices or different things, but a lot of times that's not the case, so there
Yeah,
was a
it's
whole section
just
on that.
yeah.
But then, um, there was another section on when you only have yourself to blame. And so some
Yeah.
of us have experienced loss because we've made hard choices. I have friends that have had abortions, you know, and they've had to
Mhm.
work through, um,
Yeah.
grace and
That's
forgiveness in
grief
Jesus's
too.
name,
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
different kind of grace. But, how have you come to peace with God over so much loss that was beyond your control? And maybe, like, if there's a mom on either side of those things, you know, like, what can you tell a mom who's struggling with loss today that maybe helped you get out of bed the next day?
Yeah, good question. 2 things. Look for the good. I think we do get those blinders on so often, and we only see
Mhm.
those hard things. I like to compare it to when you're driving early in the morning and you're driving into the sun, and, like, all you can see is the sunlight in front of you, and you can't even see the road. Like, everything's kinda blocked because of the sun when you're driving straight into the sunrise.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is what our grief feels like. Like, it blocks out everything else, and we can only see that thing that's right in front of
Mhm.
us. So
That's
look
so
for the
good.
good, look for those things because that will help you to find God's fingerprints in the midst of it. So that would be the first thing. And then the
Okay.
second thing is to let yourself feel it. Like, whatever it is that you are feeling, if it's anger, if it's betrayal, like, whatever it is you're feeling, let yourself feel those things because our God is big enough that He can handle all those big feelings that you don't want to admit to anyone. He can handle them. He's big enough.
Yes, because I think, just a little backstory. Are you the firstborn?
I'm
Are
the
you
first, I'm the middle child, but I'm the first female.
first female? But, like, would you describe yourself as kinda like you like perfection
Oh,
or
100%. I
control?
have a lot of the firstborn characteristics because I am the
So
first female. Yeah.
because I can, through some of my, like, recovery, um, walk, like, I love that you said let yourself feel because a lot of times, like, if you're the, like, firstborn or the first female, like,
Type
we put on
A.
this hat. Yeah,
Yes.
that we have to we judge we there's a lot of self-hate that you don't even realize
Mhm.
is self-hate because you're judging yourself so hard.
And I
Really
think also
scary.
telling yourself what you would tell a friend. Like I would never say some of the things that I say to myself, I would never say to someone else. So like you need to
That's
tell
so good.
yourself what you tell those people around you because we give so much more grace to other
Yes.
people than we do ourselves.
Somebody else who writes really well about loss, a different kind of loss, and being in the pit is, Anne Voskamp. Did you ever
I
read
love
her 1,000 Gifts?
1000 Gifts. Yes. That
Yes.
book brought me through
Yes.
like
Okay.
do we
I was
do
gonna
yeah.
ask.
Yes, that was one of the resources that I felt was so helpful to me is practicing gratitude as a result of reading that book that helped me see
Yes.
those things because like she says in her book like those things were there all those blessings those 1000 gifts are there but you have to look for them otherwise you're not
Yeah,
going to recognize them in your life.
totally. Well, I'm so thankful that, I've gotten to hear more of your story, and like we said, everybody's story is different, but even if the story looks the same, who we're married to, where we're at is just
Circumstances
different.
are all different. Yeah.
It's all different,
Yeah.
but there's a mama probably listening who might have lost all hope that God is real because she's stuck. She's stuck in
Mhm.
the why. Why did this happen, God? Why did this happen? Um, what would you share with her today?
I think I'd just say hang on with whatever thread that's still there. And God's
Yeah.
still hanging on to you. And that
Mm,
even if you feel like you're just hanging on by a thread, just hang on and be real
yeah.
with Him and be honest with Him about some of the most healing times for me was when I finally stopped pretend praying and began real praying, like actually telling God, this is how I feel.
Oh,
And
dang. That's
this
good.
is this is not
Pretend
like
praying, yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
like I'm
That's
not
like
just
a
saying the
real truth
words.
confession.
Yes.
Oh,
I
man.
told you I was going to be honest. I'm an open book. So,
See,
yeah.
that's the do-gooder, the perfectionist being like, "I know I need to pray, we're gonna pray right now, but I'm
Yes.
not feeling it, I don't believe it,
I'm
but
going
I'm
to
gonna
say the
pray."
words. Yeah, and I don't really believe anything I'm saying, but whatever, I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like actually being real and being honest and being authentic even if that's very angry because like I said
Yeah.
I feel like God knows he knows what you're feeling. He knows how broken and how deep that pain is
Yes.
and he loves you in the midst of that. So just tell him how you're feeling. Be honest, be authentic and he can work with that. It's harder to work with us
Mhm.
when we're not talking, but if we'll just talk, he
Mm.
can work through that.
Yeah, and like you said, get help if needed
And get
and
help if you need it. Absolutely. There is
yeah.
no shame in going to a licensed counselor, none at all.
Yeah.
It can be really, really beneficial.
And I'm glad we talked about the 1,000 Gifts book. I'll include some of these things in the show notes. Are there any
Yes, I
other
love it.
resources that you recommend for mamas walking through grief? And where can
1000
people
Gifts
find
was
you?
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm lindseymbell.com is my website.
Okay.
I'm not super active because my work just takes
Yeah.
my work and my kids take a lot of my life. So this season is a lower writing speaking season for me. Hopefully, I'll be able to devote more time to it in the years ahead. But yeah, you can find me at lindseymbell.com. But as far as other resources, yeah, 1000 Gifts was really good. Another book that was really good for me during that time was called Plan B by Pete Wilson. I
Okay.
haven't read it again since then, so
Okay.
I'm
But it
curious
ministered to
reading it.
you.
But it was so really because it was just very authentic and very honest and real too, which is what I needed in that time. Like, and it's I think the subheading is something like Plan B: What to do when like when plan A doesn't come to pass or when God doesn't give you plan A, something like that. But he's a Christian man, Pete Wilson's author, and it was a great book that
Okay.
really ministered to me in my own plan B. Like I didn't get the plan A that I was praying for, but yeah, finding God in the
Yeah.
midst of my plan B.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing today and just being vulnerable and your heartaches and pains and just reality of this is the story, not what you would have chosen maybe, but
Yeah,
here
definitely
you
not.
are,
Nobody wants to join the miscarriage club. Like, yeah, definitely
you
not.
know,
But yeah,
but coming to
absolutely. Thank you
share.
so much for having me. It was good to catch up and to see your beautiful face.
Thank you for joining the Only Love Today podcast. I hope you are encouraged to look like love no matter where God has you. If you want to learn more about what we discussed, be sure to check out the show notes and head on over to onlylovetoday.com. If you were encouraged by this conversation, please share it with a friend and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Remember, whatever happens today, before you respond, stop and think, only love today.